Thank you for joining me. When I first started doing this, I did it to make kind of lighthearted fun at just how bad our politicians and our government had become, and bring light to the fact that we do need to change things and that things are really bad, but do it kind of fun, do it kind of satirically, and just have fun. Instead, I found out just how bad our government's become. And I fell down a rabbit hole that I just don't think I like being in. So what I'm going to do is let you read, listen, and look for yourself, and just see how far down the pit into this deep, dark abyss we've really fallen. Thank you again. Please like, share, and join. And I hope you enjoy this video.
But of course, for all the colour and noise, the characters, the invention, there was a dark side to the Industrial Revolution, a darker side to the bull ring.
As the beat pounds to remind us of the relentless drive of industry, they drag a beast, a bull, 10 metres high.
And enraged by injustice.
Happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Point. One of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of
semi-fascism, sir. In December, you will...
You know what I mean.
Senator Lindsey Graham said last night there would be riots in the street if former President Trump is prosecuted for taking classified government documents to Mar-a-Lago. What is the White House response to that?
So, we have seen MAGA Republicans attack our democracy. We have seen MAGA Republicans take away our rights, make threats of violence, including this weekend. And that is what the president was referring to when you all asked me last week.
Let's get started with what was supposed to be a success for the Biden administration. This is where they decided to pay off the debts of thousands of former students. I mean, beyond the fact that it really shouldn't be up to the taxpayer if a liberal arts students with a degree in gender, queer, climate, whatever, can't find a job. We've now learned that this scheme is going to cost $400 billion. Mate, you could knock an asteroid out of the sky for less, couldn't you?
Yeah, I know. And that doesn't even seem very feasible. But honestly, you know, who this really hurts is this hurts the normal American, the middle class American that had a normal job, that didn't get to go to college, that didn't get to, LARP as a general studies major. And see, this is what it's meant to do, Rowan, is it's meant to actually divide us here in America, to cause us, to fight one another over an issue like, public education, because really when it comes to these colleges, they're too expensive anyway. So, young Americans are going into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt for a college degree that doesn't even guarantee them a job. So we have a really screwed up system. And, giving a few kids $10,000, and student loan forgiveness, all that does is really make more people upset. And it's just a political stunt to gain some sort of clout before the upcoming November elections.
Well, maybe giving them $10,000 stops them going out on crime sprees, or maybe not, because...
Worthy part of this, Ryan, is the part about what she calls her own sex addiction and how she says she got this sex addiction. And this is the paragraph in which she mentions Joe Biden. I'm going to read this. It was from an entry January 30th, 2019. Where she says, I've always been boy crazy. She says, I was hypersexualized at a young age. What is this due to? Was I molested? I think so. I can't remember the specifics, but I do remember trauma. I remember not liking the blank house at some family's house. I remember somewhat being sexualized with a female cousin. I remember having sex with friends at a young age. Showers with my dad, probably not appropriate. Being turned on when I wasn't supposed to be. And she goes from there. The showers with her dad, which she describes as probably not appropriate, is newsworthy. And it's especially newsworthy because it fits into a greater pattern of bizarre behavior by Joe Biden with young women that the media has also been reluctant to cover. Going to be honest, I do want to know more about showers with her father that she thinks were probably not appropriate, Joel. I think that's fair game. We've watched this. Ryan interviewed Tara Reid. I interviewed Tara Reid. Almost nobody else in the media would talk about Tara Reid, Joe Biden's sexual harassment accuser who came forward during the campaign. You can disbelieve her all you want. Fine, that's your prerogative. But that's newsworthy. And the media completely snuffed out that story. He was also accused by another person of Lucy Flores of having touched her inappropriately. We had Betsy DeVos on the show not long ago. Betsy DeVos, the former education secretary under Trump, who said she was in a wheelchair at one point and Joe Biden came over, put his hands on the wheelchair, put his forehead down to hers and started rubbing her forehead. And she felt trapped and inappropriate. He's got a pattern of this. We've all seen the videos of him with a young girl sniffing the hair. And I'm sorry, it may make you feel uncomfortable, but it is worthy of discussion as to whether this guy's got a pattern of inappropriate behavior toward women, especially young ones.
I agree, and I think that's what makes it newsworthy. What's interesting is that Project Veritas decided not to publish it, despite its newsworthiness, for all the reasons you mentioned, as well as the fact that it did actually become part of the campaign in 2020 because Joe Biden was eventually pressured to come out and admit that he had been a touchy-feely sort of person. He didn't say toward women or younger women in particular. He just said, that's the way I am with everybody, with men and women. I'm going to try to be different.
The Andrew Cuomo defense.
Right, exactly. So I think it's relevant from that point of view and newsworthy. The question is, from the perspective of Project Veritas, why wasn't it published? And we don't know the full answer to that. And from the limited reporting there's been about that, it appears that they made a strategic decision that it would look somewhat cheap, or it would be a cheap.
I'm confused about the reasons, because as I recall, when James came on this show, he said the reason we didn't publish it is because we could never satisfy ourselves that in fact it was Ashley Biden's. That they had done a few things to try to confirm that, but they never got it to the point where he was comfortable saying.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah. Well, but can I just say, let me just finish and then I'll give it back to you.
Yeah.
But that now the New York Times is reporting that what actually happened was they did satisfy themselves that it was hers. They got her on the phone. Some of James's people, his journalists, got her on the phone saying, oh, we think we found it. We want to return it to you. And everybody involved felt that they had sufficient confirmation from her. She was like, oh, God, yes, please give it to me, to proceed based on the assumption this did indeed belong to her. And then they report that James allegedly went to then candidate Joe Biden and wanted an on-camera interview with him in which he was going to present the diary. And that never happened. And then James did not publish it. And then James went down to the authorities in Florida and returned it, saying, we believe it may be stolen property. And then 1 year later was raided. At this point, Joe Biden had become president.
Gentlemen, the good news is, for me, I'm here. The bad news for you is I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And I want to see these beautiful young ladies. I want to see them dancing when they're 4 years older, too. Guess what? We got a lot to do. You got to say hi to me. We go back a long way. She was 12, I was 30, but anyway, this woman helped me get an awful lot done. Anyway. And by the way, I sit on the stand and it get hot, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. Well, thank you. Please, if you have a seat, sit down. And I got to make one check here.
Tara, thank you so much for being here. So let's go back to 1992.
Mm-hmm.
You get a job working for then Senator Joe Biden as what?
A staff assistant.
You're overseeing the interns.
Correct. So I was very excited to be on the Hill. I was very excited to work for Joe Biden. He's someone I looked up to.
So you're on Capitol Hill. You're how old at this point?
I'm 28. 29.
And you make some friends, including a woman who I'm just going to call Karen
Mm-hmm.
for the purposes of this interview,
Correct.
who's working in Ted
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy's office. Then at some point in your 8-month stint working for Biden,
Mm-hmm.
you claim you were sexually harassed, and I'm making a distinction here between harassment and assault. We'll
Right.
get to the alleged assault in a minute.
Look at me, but he would just put his hand on my shoulder, and then I would feel his finger underneath my hair, like on my neck. And
Stroking your neck?
Yeah, just a little with his finger, and it just would make me freeze up because I'm a demonstrative person, but he was my boss and quite a bit older than me, and I just was surprised by that. And I walked in, I was called in actually, to the office by Marianne Baker, to her office, and there was a discussion going on about me.
Marianne Baker was Joe Biden's assistant for 30 years. She's in her 70s now, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But she was your boss.
Correct. They were having a discussion about having me serve drinks at a fundraising event, and an aide was arguing that to me, saying that, I didn't have to do that. That wasn't my job, that because the senator had said he liked my legs and thought I was pretty, I didn't have to do this.
Who told you that?
It was a Senate aide.
That it heard Biden wanted you because he
Mm-hmm.
liked your legs.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I had one of my hallway meetings with Marianne Baker when she talked to me about it. And she just said, if you want to get along here, you need to keep your head down and do what you're told. And she said, you need to button up your blouses, you need to have longer skirts, and you need to not look so sexy and noticeable. And you need to, change how you're dressing.
So what do you think that was about?
I think looking back on it, it was almost like damage control. It's like they were coming out aggressively at me because of the drinks thing, I think, but I don't know.
Did you change the way that you dressed?
No,
So there comes a day
Mm-hmm.
at some point that spring of 1993.
Correct.
Where you say Senator Biden and you had an experience in a hallway in one of the Capitol buildings. Can you describe what happened that day?
Yes, but Marianne came rushing in with this bag, like a duffel bag or gym bag, she called it, and said, hurry, the senator's already on his way. Just follow him and try to catch him before the Capitol and give him this. He wants his bag. And then I saw him at a distance. He was talking to someone, and they walked away the other direction. And then he greeted me. He remembered my name. And then I said, here you go, Senator. I handed him the bag. And it happened very quickly. I remember being pushed up against the wall. He had his hands underneath my clothes. And he had one hand underneath my shirt, and the other hand, I had a skirt on, and he went down my skirt and then went up. And I remember I was up almost on my tippy toes. And when he went inside the skirt, he was talking to me at the same time, and he was leaning into me, and I pulled this way away from his head, I remember. And so he was kissing my neck area, and he whispered, did I want to go somewhere else? But he said something vulgar. And
May I ask what?
He said, I want to fuck you. And he said it low, and I was pushing away. His fingers were inside of my private area, my vagina, and he was saying that to me, saying those things to me, and I was pulling away. And then he pulled back immediately when he could see I wasn't complying. He pulled back and he looked at me and he said, "Come on, man, I heard you liked me." He pointed his finger at me and he said, "You're nothing to me. You're nothing." When he saw me obviously start to get upset by what he said, he took me by the shoulders and he just kind of shook me, almost like, and said, "You're okay, you're all right."
Well, all good things must end, huh? So we come to the final time tonight, and I feel like I want to see if I can't maybe pull everything together for us as we talk about a Christian worldview. I don't really need to rehearse what's going on in the world. You know that. It's inescapable. You don't need information about the disappointments in our culture, the disappointments in our world. You don't need to know that everything is upside down. As in Isaiah chapter 5, bitter has been swapped with sweet and good has been swapped with bad. And we're living in an inverted and upside down world. But I want to give you a perspective biblically so that you can understand what's going on. And the first thing I want to say is you have to understand this. What is happening in our country and largely in our world is a divine judgment. I just want you to mark that in your mind. It is a divine judgment. Joe Biden is not in charge of this. God is. And our Congress and our Senate and the people who run this nation, whoever's behind the Wizard of Oz pulling the strings, does not have the final sovereign say over this nation or over any nation in the world. So we are experiencing the judgment of God on our nation. It's not as if we're waiting for it. It's not as if it's nearby. We're in the middle of this judgment. And I want to show you that by having you open your Bible to Romans chapter 1. And this is just an introduction for you, but how do you know when a nation is under judgment? How do you know? Can you be sure? And the answer to that is you can know and you can be certain, and I'll show you how. Romans chapter 1, verse 18. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness." Any nation, any association of human beings that constitute a culture, if they turn away from the truth in unrighteousness, will receive the wrath of God. Now, the wrath of God comes in many forms. There is eternal wrath, that's hell. There is eschatological wrath. That would be all of the expressions of wrath in the book of Revelation, all the judgments that fall on the earth that you know of in the time of the tribulation. That's eschatological wrath. Our Lord talked about that in his sermon on the second coming in Matthew 24 and 25. So there's eternal wrath, eschatological wrath. There's kind of cataclysmic wrath. Massive earthquakes, massive floods, the most massive being the Genesis flood, where God literally drowned the entire human race with the exception of one family. There is sowing and reaping wrath. Whatever you sow, you reap. There are consequences to sinful behavior that are built into that sinful behavior. So there are many aspects of the wrath of God, and it works inexorably, it works inevitably, and it works justly. But there's another kind of wrath, and that's what's being talked about in Romans 1. This is the wrath of abandonment. This is the wrath of abandonment. This is historical. In Acts 14, the Bible says God allowed all the nations to go their own way. The history of the world is the history of nations going their own way and consequently experiencing the wrath of divine abandonment. And that is what is in view in Romans 1:18, the wrath of God revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. This is the perfect place on the planet to connect with that, right? God, by his creation, has put himself on display to the degree that his eternal power and divine nature are manifest, and anyone who rejects him is without excuse. And men do, and nations do, and cultures do, and that's the cycle of human history. Even though they knew God, verse 21, they did not honor him as God or give thanks because they became empty in their speculations. Their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible men and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling things. They'll substitute anything for the true God, including animals. idols of all kinds. So what you have here is the wrath of God unleashed all the time through human history upon every people that suppress the truth in unrighteousness, the truth concerning God, which may be known by the creation. And chapter 2 of Romans says, by the law of God written in the heart. So they're also without excuse. They reject what is revealed. They know there must be a God. They don't honor him. They don't give thanks. They become empty in their understanding, and their foolish heart is darkened. They profess to be wise, but they are actually fools, and they exchange the incorruptible God for some other deity of their own making. Then verse 24 is the key. Therefore, what happens when a nation abandons God? Therefore, God gave them over. This spells out what this wrath is. God gave them over. And remember, this is historic. This is not looking at the future. This is looking at history. God gave them, past tense, over in the lusts of their hearts to impurity so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. When this wrath goes into place, the first thing you will see is a sexual revolution. When God abandons a culture, you will see them sink to a low level of lust and impurity and the dishonoring of their bodies. The first thing that happens when a nation is under judgment is a sexual revolution. Verse 25 says, reminding us why it happened, they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So look back to 1970, 1980, and remember when the sexual revolution began. That was step one in the abandonment of this society by God himself. Step two comes in verse 26. For this reason, again looking back at verse 25, because of their rejection of God, for this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions, for their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. Verse 27, in the same way also the men abandoned their natural function of the woman, burned in their desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own person the due penalty of their error. When God abandons a society, the first thing that happens is a sexual revolution, inevitably followed by a homosexual revolution. And you have it described in verses 26 and 27. And interestingly enough, it starts with the female side of that and lesbianism, because when God abandons a nation, the instinct, the strongest human instinct there is, the instinct of women mothering their children, is perverted. This is that severe a blow, this level of judgment on human culture and human society. And then you have the male homosexuals in verse 27, committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. There's an immediate penalty, and you would remember it as the AIDS epidemic. It's built in. It's a venereal disease that is built in because that kind of behavior will have built in its own punishment as well as being evidence of the abandonment of God. And why does this happen? Because they didn't see fit to acknowledge God any longer. Verse 28, they keep going back, these verses, to the reason. They rejected God, they rejected God, they rejected God. First, there's a sexual revolution, followed by a homosexual revolution, verse 26 and 27. Then look at the middle of verse 28. Here's step 3. God gave them over to a depraved mind. A depraved mind is a mind that doesn't function. Sometimes it's translated reprobate mind. But the Greek word means non-functioning. That's when you're a man and you think you're a woman. It's a kind of insanity. And it's an insanity that is such an insanity, it begs the issue of reason to even think people would do this. The reason people are doing it is because they are under divine judgment. God has let them have a reprobate mind. So when you see all of this transgender activity, and when you see them want to make laws to protect transgender identity, and you know it is absolute and total and utter insanity, you know we've reached the reprobate mind. People can't think reasonably, which means there's no way back to sanity. There's no way back. And because it is a divine judgment on them, God doesn't interrupt the course of their thinking down this path of sexual revolution, homosexual revolution, to the kind of insanity that we see with transgenderism. I used to wonder what in the world the reprobate mind could be, but we're living in the middle of it. It is insane, it is irrational, it is ridiculous, and yet it is so strongly in our culture that the society and its leaders are making laws to protect the people who are absolutely insane. That's the reprobate mind. So this is judgment. This is judgment. And out of that depraved mind, what are you going to get? Well, you're going to get, verse 29, all kinds of unrighteousness, all kinds of wickedness, all kinds of greed, evil, envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. That's the Greek word kakia, which means generic, general evil. Gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, and unmerciful. So what is that? That's what you see every day on the news. That's just the way people are. That's the way they live. And verse 32 says they know the ordinance of God. Look at our nation. There's not a dearth of reality or truth. This nation was really founded with the knowledge of the Word of God, the Bible. It's had it in its entire 200 plus years. They know the ordinance of God. They also know that in the ordinance of God, those who practice such things are worthy of death, but they not only do the same, but they give hearty approval to those who practice them. You have a president who is a Roman Catholic and who is advocating the insanity at the third level of divine judgment as if this is normal. What you see in our country is the unfolding of the judgment of God in Romans chapter 1. So mark it down. There is no group of senators or congressmen or anybody else who is going to reverse this. This is not reversible. This is divine judgment. Now, in the middle of that, you might be saying to yourself, I hope the Lord remembers his people in the midst of this. I hope he doesn't get so carried away with judgment that he misses us. And that reminds me of the end of the very last book in the Old Testament, the book of Malachi. This is a word of comfort. God is promising judgment from the prophet Malachi. And in verse 16 of Malachi 3, we read this. Then those who feared the Lord spoke to one another. Here we are in the middle of this, talking to each other and saying, what's going to happen? What's going to happen in the future? And that was exactly what the people of Malachi's time were saying. What's going to happen? And the Lord gave attention and heard it. I love this. A book of remembrance was written before him for those who fear the Lord and who esteem his name. They will be mine, says the Lord of hosts, on the day that I prepare my own possession, and I will spare them as a man spares his own son who serves him. So you will again distinguish between the righteous and the wicked, between one who serves God and one who does not serve him. God has a book, and in that book are the people who belong to him. And none of them are going to get washed up in the judgment. This is important because we have to understand, people, that we are living in a Romans 1 world of judgment. This is how it is. But we are his. We are his own possession. Verse 4 looks ahead. For behold, the day is coming burning like a furnace, and all the arrogant and every evildoer will be chaff, and the day that is coming will set them ablaze. Now you're looking at eschatological judgment, so that it will leave neither root or branch. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, and you will go forth and skip about like calves from the stall. You will tread down the wicked, for they will be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day which I am preparing, says the Lord of hosts. What day is that? The day that Christ returns to establish his kingdom. It will be a day of fire and judgment, but the Lord knows those who are his. And we are safe because our names are written in his book.
I bear it no more.
Listen, Alex, they always say that if you rely on Hitler to win your argument, you've lost the argument before you even start, which bodes not well for Hillary Clinton when it comes to if she's going to run against Donald Trump at the next election. Who knows? But here she is basically saying Donald Trump is all. Let's think of it. Oh, yes, Hitler. Have a listen.
I remember as a young student, trying to figure out how did people get basically drawn in by Hitler. How did that happen? And I'd watch newsreels and I'd see this guy standing up there ranting and raving and people shouting and raising their arms. I thought, what's happened to these people? Why did they believe that? You saw the rally in Ohio the other night. Trump is there ranting and raving for more than an hour, and you have these rows of young men with their arms raised.
Alex, I mean, seriously, this is just nonsense, isn't it?
Well, they've turned the American citizen into a domestic terrorist. And when you have people like Hillary Clinton, whose husband was on the Lolita Express with Jeffrey Epstein 26 times with no Secret Service, she doesn't mention that. They fear Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, it's really who they hate the most is the American citizens. They hate the middle class. And Hillary Clinton is a shining example of that. And let's just say that Hillary Clinton does not have a love for America. She's a globalist. All she cares about is her own political career. So if she can somehow throw Americans under the bus for her political gain, that's what she does. And, she's, in my opinion, responsible for the murder of a lot of people. And I know that that's just rumor and innuendo, but she is not a good person. Anything she says, I would believe the opposite, in my opinion.
I'll take that firmly as your opinion, Alex.
To its close. Who's that girl? Their shoes should come with a content warning. What a waste.
New girl, say hi to the world.
The sky over a local junior high has torn open.
Mom, get in!
There's no more putting this off. Your dad is the devil, and you're the Antichrist.
I'm supposed to accept that you had sex with Satan or anyone?
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Come to your father, Damien. Oh, you're a girl. The future is female.
Pleased to meet you.
Where have you been my whole life?
The metaphysical realm. It's not hell, but it's got the essentials. Look at that guy. He's got a bird head and he craps bubbles.
When we dated, were you inside someone's corpse?
And you had an unfinished dolphin tattoo. Don't be a snob.
Oh.
She says I lied to protect you.
She sounds like a bitch.
That's what I said.
Hey, look at me. I'm bad grandma.
What do you make of this thing? Biblical or the media?
I like things the way they were.
Get your hands off my daughter.
Our daughter.
Oh, great. My parents are here.
I'm a chicken now.
This party just got lame.
If my parents ever show up to a party, murder me.
I want to turn to the FBI. How many FBI agents or confidential informants actively participated in the events of January 6th?
Sir, I'm sure you can appreciate that I can't go into the specifics of sources and methods.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants actively participate in the events of January 6th? Yes or no?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants commit crimes of violence on January 6th?
I can't answer that, sir.
Did any FBI agents or FBI informants actively encourage and incite crimes of violence on January 6th?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Ms. Sadburn, who is Ray Epps?
I'm aware of the individual, sir. I don't have the specific background to him.
Well, there are a lot of people who are understandably very concerned about Mr. Epps. On the night of January 5th, 2021, Epps wandered around the crowd that had gathered, and there's video out there of him chanting, "Tomorrow, we need to get into the Capitol, into the Capitol." This was strange behavior, so strange that the crowd began chanting, "Fed, Fed, 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 Fed." Ms. Sandburn, was Ray Epps a Fed?
Sir, I cannot answer that question.
The next day, on January 6th, Mr. Epps is seen whispering to a person, and 5 seconds later, 5 seconds after he's whispering to a person, that same person begins to forcibly tear down the barricades. Did Mr. Epps urge them to tear down the barricades?
Sir, similar to the other answers, I cannot answer that.
Shortly thereafter, the FBI put out a public post seeking information on individuals connected with violent crimes on January 6th. Among those individuals, in the bottom there, is Mr. Epps. The FBI publicly asked for information, offering cash rewards leading to information leading to the arrest. This was posted, and then, sometime later, magically, Mr. Epps disappeared from the public posting. According to public records, Mr. Epps has not been charged with anything. No one's explained why a person videoed urging people to go to the Capitol, a person whose conduct was so suspect the crowd believed he was a Fed, would magically disappear from the list of people the FBI was looking at. Ms. Sandburn, a lot of Americans are concerned that the federal government deliberately encouraged illegal and violent conduct on January 6th. My question to you, and this is not an ordinary law enforcement question, this is a question of public accountability. Did federal agents or those in service of federal agent actively encourage violent and criminal conduct on January 6th?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Thank you.
What the hell is going on with the DNC bomber case? Now, if you remember, we were told that an individual who is on tape and he leaves what appears to be a pipe bomb there. I'll get to that in a second. But I've addressed this in detail over and over again. How is it that a guy we are told, or a woman we don't know, this bomber, who could be the single greatest threat to democracy, who may have participated in the insurrection of January 6th, you get my point, obvious hyperbole here. How is it that the FBI hasn't found this individual? How? Folks, when the World Trade Center was bombed the first time, do you remember this, Joe? The way they found the guy was from a partial VIN of the exploded van that they rented, I believe, in New Jersey. Yeah. Partial VIN, vehicle identification number. Yeah. It wasn't even the whole VIN.
No.
How is it that you have video of this alleged bomber, you have multiple camera angles, and you have no idea who this person is? Something is rotten in the, not state of Denmark, but Washington, D.C. Darren Beatty, who is an amazing reporter at Revolver, he has been all over some of the open questions behind what happened on January 6th and the day before. Now, without getting into January 6th specifically today, because there's a lot of open questions there. Why were doors open? Why were people being waved in? Who were all these people who are on tape telling people inside the Capitol and now are not prosecuted? Those are all open questions. We understand that. But folks, I have a lot of friends in the NYPD and a lot of friends who are 1811s, federal agents at the federal level. And many of them have communicated to me that this is impossible, that the FBI doesn't at least have an idea of who this person is or where he came from. How? Because folks, the way you investigate a case like this, okay, let's just take January 6th out of it for a minute. Let's say you're in a busy area, like say Washington, D.C., an individual on tape, face a bit obfuscated by some, it looks like a mask and a hood, but an individual on videotape or digital recording goes and sits down on a bench near a series of benches in front of the DNC headquarters right before January 6th, okay? So there's surveillance camera everywhere. So if someone were to drop a pipe bomb in the middle of, say, a DC busy area, like in front of the DNC headquarters, and you've got that on video, the first thing they're going to get is the video of the pipe bomb there, because they're going to say, well, here's where we found the pipe bomb. It's at whatever, 17th and K, whatever. It doesn't matter. You get it? How are they going to know? Because someone reports the pipe bomb. So what's the first thing the investigators do? They go in, they get to the surrounding buildings. They say, hey, we need that video. That's what happened here. Now, that video may or may not be helpful. Someone could have a mask on, gloves, whatever. So how would you identify the person? Well, then you get the video, how they entered that frame. You go back a block, and then you go back a block when they entered that frame, and then back. And you see how you trace their steps backwards? You almost walk with them in reverse. And then you get the camera footage for the other stuff. And then he's at another corner. And then eventually, ladies and gentlemen, what happens? Even if you have a face covering, a hood, gloves on, and eyeglasses, eventually that person, when you trace their steps backwards, going from camera 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 10 to 20, eventually that person does what? They get out of a car, they leave a residence, they get out of a cab, or they come out of a hotel room. Can you tell me another way they could have gotten there? Somebody was caught on camera when they went in reverse, leaving a car, a cab, a hotel room, or a house. And what do all those things provide for you, Joe? A license plate, an address, or a hotel with a check-in reservation. How does the FBI not know this? They have to have something. How do they not know who this guy is or woman? Or do they know who it is? And they don't want you to know who it is. Revolver has definitive proof the FBI is hiding critical footage of the January 6th pipe bomber, where they describe how the FBI probably has video of the person, has video of them dropping that pipe bomb. And yet, for some reason, we haven't seen the money shot angle. Why is that? Here, listen to this.
DNC pipe bomb. According to the FBI, it was planted the night before January 6th at 7:52 p.m. on the north side of this park bench. the FBI has released 2 clips of the pipe bomber at this scene from 2 different security cameras. Here are a few shots of the surrounding area, so you see the perspective. Let's call these benches Bench 1 and Bench 2. And let's call the 2 security cameras that the FBI has released footage from Camera 1 and Camera 2. Camera 1 shows the pipe bomber walking up to the DNC grounds at roughly 7:40 p.m. He sits on Bench 1. Then he gets up and walks off screen. According to the FBI, he walks the length of the DNC building, and 10 minutes later, he comes back to the same bench area and sits on Bench 2. There, at 7:52 p.m., Camera 2 captures the pipe bomber sitting on Bench 2 and, we are told, planting the pipe bomb by the side of the bench, next to the bush. We are told the pipe bomber plants the pipe bomb there, but we can't see it. Camera 2 is occluded by a giant bush that blocks the scene. The pipe bomber even looks at Camera 2 head-on, for some reason. It's very frustrating, because we can't see the moment the pipe bomber plants the pipe bomb, but the FBI can. That's because the whole scene should be captured on Camera 1 as well, and much more clearly than Camera 2. Camera 1 has a clear shot of both benches. If the FBI released the full tape from Camera 1, we could see the pipe bomber planting the bomb. Why is the FBI hiding the security footage from Camera 1 of the pipe bomber at Bench 2? Do they not want us to see the full scene? Isn't there a $100,000 reward? Don't they want our help to catch this guy?
The hell do you think is going on here? How is it that Vice President-elect at the time visited that DNC headquarters where that alleged bomb was outside? It is the most rudimentary, basic, almost laughably constructed, quote, pipe bomb I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's literally a pipe with like an egg timer on it. Folks, a professional who was able to evade FBI surveillance, like we're being led to believe, like the FBI doesn't know who he was and they didn't catch him coming out of a house or a car, right? A professional at surveillance and counter-surveillance would never put together a device like this that wouldn't even pass in a MacGyver TV sitcom for a bomb. Let's get to question number 1. How the hell did the Secret Service, who was sweeping that area, miss that pipe bomb? They had to have swept it unless it was an off-the-record movement. That Vice President-elect Kamala Harris went to this spot. Movement, it's possible there was no sweep. If there was a sweep, and it's called an EOD sweep, Explosives Ordnance Disposal Team, how do you miss that? It was left, obviously, for people to find, and it was constructed in such a ridiculous, over-the-top, rudimentary way. It was obviously meant to scream bomb. When we were in the training center in the Secret Service and we were instructing these people, these students, these agents, we would plant fake stuff like that so they would find it during the scene. Obviously inert, nothing in it. But it was supposed to look ridiculous. Mm-hmm. That's what this looks like to me. How was this not found? The dog that would have done the sweep, in addition to a handler and a bomb tech, an EOD team consists of a tech, a bomb tech, and a dog team. The tech looks for stuff. Obviously, the human tech isn't sniffing around. And the dog, using its ethmoturbinates, sniffs around for gunpowder. If that was an actual bomb sitting right there, how did the dog not sniff it out? What if it was inert, Dan? Well, if it was inert and a dummy bomb, why would someone plant a dummy bomb outside of DNC headquarters? We would likely know if the bomb was inert or fake because the FBI would have it and would fingerprint it. No, the device was detonated. But when it was detonated and it was real, did they fingerprint it? Did they take a sample of the explosive? You can trace the explosive in some cases. Did you get the serial number off the egg timer first? And if it was inert, why would you detonate it? My faith in federal law enforcement has been shaken over the last 3-4 years. I have completely lost faith in the management of the FBI. And I'll tell you this, I would not be surprised at all if there is a major scandal here. I only see a couple possible solutions, and I'll leave it at this. The so-called bomber was not a bomber at all. It was an inert device, and it was a political enemy of Donald Trump. I don't mean a political enemy of Donald Trump like Bernie Sanders. I mean like someone affiliated with a far-left group that hates Trump that planted that in front of the DNC to feed the insurrection narrative because they knew the Stop the Steal rally was going to happen the next day. That would explain why a dog didn't find it, because it was never meant to go off because it wasn't real. The second scenario, which is highly unlikely, is it was a sophisticated bomber who knew to evade the DC surveillance camera network, who was so sophisticated they put together a crap device that never went off mistakenly somehow, screwed that up. And that person was looking to cause an insurrection, yet the FBI, for some bizarre reason, doesn't want to release the money shot video of what that person looks like.
Their lives at risk to protect and serve others.
Yeah. Well, you know, Sean, nobody likes Kamala Harris. Can we just be clear on that? I mean, she competed in a Democrat primary and didn't even make it to Iowa. It was not a Republican, but I had nothing to do with it. I'm a registered Republican. So the Democrats apparently don't like her either. I mean, I'm just giving you the numbers. If you believe in like science-y stuff, you know, liberals claim they believe in science and everything. Let's not forget as well, the two most memorable moments of Kamala Harris's campaign was when she implied that Joe Biden was a racist, number one. That was her Star is Born moment. And the second one was when she said she believed Joe Biden's accusers, that he was all gropey, you know, and handsy and stuff. And, you know, things putting hands on people he probably shouldn't have been doing. But Kamala Harris is, she's the Beto O'Rourke of John Kerry's, you know, two candidates who would change. Remember John Kerry? I was before I was against it. You know, and Beto, who would lick his finger and change his position based on the political winds. Well, Kamala Harris is even worse. You know, I used this analogy once talking about Beto, but I think it applies better to Kamala Harris. She's like, remember Ghostbusters, you know, Gozer the Gozerian, you know, Gozer's whatever you think he is. You know, if you think of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, then that's what he becomes. That's Kamala Harris. She'll be whatever you want. She's been on the opposite side, Sean, of every position. She was for the cops and against the cops. Yeah, she has to debate. You know what? You should do that on your radio show. I did when I guest hosted for you once. Show? I did that with Obama. Ask Linda. I'm not kidding. I did an Obama versus Obama debate. Do a Kamala versus Kamala debate. It'll be a huge hit on your radio show. She has taken the opposite side of every position.
And I'll even take credit.
Do it.
All right. Real quick. Exit.
We need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No! Peacefully. Fed. Tomorrow? I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested.
Well, let's not say it.
We need to go. I'll say it.
All right.
We need to go in.
Shut the fuck up, Boomer.
To the Capitol.
Base Fed posting? All right. We need to go into the Capitol. I didn't see that coming. Okay.
Monument Hill. Stop speaking. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction. Please spread the word. All right. Okay, but one more thing.
Yeah, so can we go up there? No?
When we go in,
are we going to get arrested if we go up there?
Yeah. You don't need to get shot.
Arrest us all?